Greetings to you all. Welcome to the SEEDCO double-decker virtual field day, where we are going to be wrapping up the virtual field days in style. We're going to be having 2 virtual field days, one in Kwekwe at Sebakwe block, and the other one from Chiweshe in Mazowe. So we're going to be having, we kindly ask for you to interact with us as much as possible. Join us in the chat box, send through your questions, and at the end of the presentations, we're going to entertain and respond to all questions. Field days are important in that they are there to showcase the beauty of SEEDCO genetics that will have been established under the employment of good agronomic practices. So we are going to hear from the farmers who established this SEEDCO genetics from across the country. We have been seeing from across the country that farmers have been growing SEEDCO varieties, and we have been showcasing the virtual field days at communal and commercial scales, where we were showing maize, we were showing small grains, we were showing soybeans as well as the other crops that were being grown by farmers. So today we are going to quickly speak about maize production, and without taking much of your time, we're going to hear now from the Kwekwe team on the virtual field day conducted, where we are going to be hearing from the farmer, Mr. Knight from Sebakwe block in Kwekwe. He's going to speak about the varieties that he established, as well as what he thought were the learning points in his journey with farming with SEEDCO products.
Makadi varimi, nhasi tiri pano paSebakwe block paplot number 10 pava night avo vakarima 727. Ini ndinonzi John Moyo, murimisi wekuSEEDCO. Tichaona murimi akutitsanangurira kuti akarima sei pa 18.5 hectares dzake the727. Nekuda kuti kune COVID hatina kukwanisa kuti varimi vaungane vakawanda, saka zvakadaro tichange tichiona program iyi painternet.
Zita rangu ndonzi Charles Knight. Tikurimawo tiri pano pa subdivision 10 Sebakwe block. Tikurima tiri muKwekwe muward 4. Sekuona kwenyu takarima SEEDCO 727. Imbeu yatiri kufara nayo pagora tiri kuwana. Imbeu inoda hayo mvura yakati wandei, asi nekunaya kwayakaita neugadzira takaita tiri kufara nemaresults atiri kuwana. Pane pakurima kwedu takashandisa fertilizer inoita 400 kg per hectare. Tichishandisa planter, monosem planter, tichispesa mbeu yedu 250 by 80. Tiri kutarisira isusu tikangowanawo bhoro rinosvika rinodarika 10 tons per hectare. Takasarudzawo mbeu iyi tichitarisawo kutarisira kuti gore redu ringabude zvakanaka. Sekuona kwenyu 727 imbeu yakakura, imbeu inotipa tsanga yakanaka, tsanga dzine mitsetse yakawanda. Saka tinotarisira kuti kana pahuremu hwacho patinomenya chibage chedu hunobuda uremu hwakanaka, tichiwanawo profit, tichikwanisa kudzora pane zvatakashandisa. Paherbicide takashandisa mushonga unonzi Russell. Nofunga mukatarisa munda wedu wakachena, sora hatina kunyanyonetsa nesora. Pesticides takashandisawo Spike. Spike yakakwanisa kukontrola, takambowanawo gonye here and there, asi zvakabuda zvakanaka. Advantagewo zvakare yeSEEDCO yembeu yatinayo yekuti inenge yakaresistawo chaizvo panyaya yezvirwere. Tikatarisa isusu chibage chatakaburitsa hatisi kumboona chakaora, tiri kunyatsoona hatisi kuona gonye chakanyatsozvikwanira. chiri kubuda tichinyatsotarisira kuti chinenge chakachena. Gore rino tiri kunzwa kuti kuJMB kuri kugredwa, saka tinotarisira kupinda mugrade A nembeu yedu yatakarima ichi. Takarima pano mahectares anokwana about 15 hectares the 727 totarisirawo kuti zvinogona kutibatsirawo. Tichibvisa iyo tikutarisira kuti mazuva mashomanana ari kuteera, nekuti zvino takadyara musi wa 15 November, ezvino tikatarisa date ranhasi toona kuti ready now for harvest. Taita mazuva, nofunga mukakalculata munoona kuti taita mazuva about 147 days, and pa 147 days we are ready for harvesting. Takutomhanya izvozvo kuti harvest ikangouya ikacheka, totomhanya zvakare kuSeedco, tonotsvaga AC Nduna AC Select, tobva tangopinda muwheat. Saka pano panhiki pano pafamu pedu tiri kutarisira kuita magoo 2 pagore, gore chibage tobva tapinda mugore wheat. Totarisira zvakare kuti tikabuda muwheat tinogona kuchipindura nhingi yedu, tonotora zvakare topinda musoyabeans, toita crop rotation inoita kuti ivhu redu rirambe rakachengetedzeka. Ndo marimiro atiri kuita pano paplot 10.
There you have it, farmers. We have been listening to Mr. Knight from Sebakwe Block, Subdivision 10, who was speaking about the establishment of SC727 in the 2020-21 farming season. So just to bring out some of the highlights and talking points from his presentation, Mr. Knight spoke about the importance of variety selection because he understands that it all starts with the right genetics coupled with good agronomic practices. He then went on to explain that they started planting their crop in November, on the 15th of November, and that they established using a plant population or spacing of 80 by 25 centimeters, which gave them the optimum plant population that is desired in that crop. Then he also explained that the crop 727 is his crop of choice because it gives a big, long, attractive crop. It also gives large kernels. And he also said they're anticipating that from the large sized kernels that they are getting and the high row number, it's going to weigh more and give them a good return per dollar invested in terms of their yield level that they are going to get. They are expecting that they are going to get in their management of the crop. They came in with fertilizers and applied the basal fertilizer of 400 kg per hectare of compound D. Then they came in with management of weeds as well as insect pests. In weed control, they checked for the weed spectrum, the problematic weeds in their fields, and they came in with the desired product, which was Russell. He then mentioned that from the visual site, we could see that the fields were clean, which showed that the herbicide that they used was in line with the problematic weeds in their fields. He then went on to mention that they had a few challenges with fall armyworm, which has been a challenge and a huge menace in the past 2 to 3 seasons. But however, they managed to curb that challenge by coming in with a product called Spike, which they sprayed, and it managed to control that challenge. The farmer went on to mention that they do multiple cropping because they have irrigation. So after the harvesting of their maize crop, they are going to come in with wheat. Then after wheat, they will not then come in with the maize crop in the next season. Rather, they'll come in with soybean in a bid to introduce rotations, which are encouraged for farming to be profitable and sustainable for the environment. So this is what we were hearing from the farmer. And the farmer also mentioned that the crop managed to reach maturity in 147 days, which is to say, and to reiterate the fact that days to maturity would differ depending on the growing region. So you find that for Midlands, they have higher heat units as opposed to some areas. So they managed to get the crop reaching maturity in less than 150 days. But for 727, the range is usually from 150 to 160 days, depending on the altitude and the heat units. But for Kwekwe, because it's warmer, they managed to reach maturity in 147 days, and they managed to catch the wheat planting window, because timing is the secret to successful farming. So having heard from the farmer at this point, and we heard from the farmer and the agronomist, John Moyo, at this point, we are going to hear from the neighboring farmer as well as the farm worker, how they are seeing this crop SC727, as well as their message to other farmers out there.
Indetwawo Mr. Mtero. Tinorema tiri mu Ward 4. Ndiri muvakidzani waMr. Knight. Vanove vari kutikurudzirawo pakurima mbeu dzeseedcop. Isu tanga kurimawo kubva pa513, 529, 555 kusvika paSC727 dziri mbeu dzeseedcop. Tatiri kurudzirawo tiri kuonawo SC727 iri mbeu ine goho kudarika mbeu dzese dzatanga tiri kurima. Saka tatiri kurudzirawo varimi vanokwanisa kurimawo 727 kuti imbeu ine goho inokwanisa kutipawo matons akati per hectare, 10 and above tons per hectare. Ukangokwanisa kuirima ukaifidhawo zvinomwero kwawo.
So we've been hearing there from the neighboring farmer. It's always important for us to benchmark our practices with the practices of those who are first in class. And in this case, the neighboring farmer was there to learn from Mr. Gwata's experiences and take some notes and go and employ these good agronomic practices as well as variety selection tips at his own farm for him to improve and grow his farming enterprise. So at this point, we are now going to hear from the farm worker who is working at Mr. Knight's farm in Sebakwe, Block 10.
Zita rangu ndonzi Mazowe, ndoshanda ndiri mu Ward 4 Kwekwe district. Tiri pano pa farm reSebakwe block plot rababa na mai Knight. Taunganira seed ye SC727. Chakanyanya kunakira mbeu iyi kune varimi vanokwanisa kushandisa combine ine uniform cob size kana kuti macobs edu akaenzana. Patinowana macobs edu ari pa almost same size. Zvekuti kana tiri kuda kushandisa combine yedu tinominimize losses. Semwaka uno tikatarisa munda muno tiri kuona kuti haina kudonha sezviri kuita dzimwe mbeu. Zvekuti kana tashandisa combine malosses futi anenge ari mashoma. Iyi variety yakaresista kugonye redu riri kunetsa re4 armyworm. Takambospraya asi hatina kunyanya kuaffecta since variety yakaresista ku4 armyworm. Tiri kutarisira kuti kana tikakohwa tikufana kuwana high yield. Tanga tiri kunyanya rima ma medium varieties, but pataona kuti muno it's now possible kurima ma 7 series and panapa yakaperformawo zvakanaka. Chimwe chakanyanyonakira variety iyi yakanyanyonakira pa high yield. Tiri kukurudzira varimi kuti kune vane madiridziro vaya tinokwanisawo kuenda kuSeedco kunotenga wheat, vane mbeu yewheat yakanaka. Saka kuti kana tikapedza kukohwa tinokwanisa kuti tiende kuSeedco tonotsvaka mbeu yedu yewheat.
So we've heard there from the worker at Mr. Knight's farm. She was explaining that selection of seeds is important. Where at their farm, traditionally, they used to grow only the medium maturing variety, given the nature of their region. So this year, they managed to establish SC727, and because of the rains that we received and the forecasts that they had been given by the meteorological services, they established SC727, and they are quite happy with the performance of this variety. She went on to explain that this variety is high yielding with a high yield potential, and it's disease tolerant. Bearing in mind that the rains were quite persistent and insistent in the 2020-21 farming season, particularly in Midlands, where they got over 1,000 millimeters of rainfall amounts that they usually don't get. So this is important for us to bear in mind that when we select varieties, we need to be guided by the seasonal forecast and an understanding of the region that we will be in. She went on to mention that this variety is a good variety for farmers to grow. It also produces sizable crops and can be used for different uses, for commercial, for green mealies because of the size of the crops. She went on to encourage other farmers to buy wheat varieties from Seedco because Seedco is tried and tested. It has good genetics that are meant to bring about the value addition and business sense in farming. So she encouraged farmers after harvesting their maize to grow wheat varieties that come from Seedco. And this just goes to show that at this farm, plot 10 in Zimbabwe, they take farming as a formidable business and they plan ahead and buy their varieties on time and in line with their region. And on that note, we are going to move on to Mazowe, Mashonaland East Province. We are going to move on to Mazowe, Mashonaland Central Province, where we are going to be hearing from Mr. Gwata from Chiweshe. He's going to give us his farming journey, and we're going to hear as well from the agronomists. But we encourage you to send through your questions so that we can interact and respond to your questions at the end of this webinar.
Ndinonzi Augustine Gwata, ava ndamai Gwata, tinogara muraini machitiyo kwaGweshe, Mazowe district, Ward 12. Ndinorima ndiri pano pamba pangu pamusha. Ndinorima mbeu yeSeedco 727 yenzou ne 659 yeshumba. Ndinorima nzvimbo yakatandavara 2 hectares. Ini ndakadivide nzvimbo iyo into 2. The other portion ndakaisa shumba, the other one ndakaisa nzou. Saka pambeu idzodzo ndiri kutarisira gohwo rinopfuura randakanga ndinaro gore rakapera. Gore rakapera ndakawana 10 tons. But this year ndiri kutarisira more than that. Nokuti mbeu yangu kunyange mukaona muguru wandakabata uyu imbeu hombe yandakakwanisa kuti inge ichidai. Munda wese mbeu miguru yacho yakangodai, yakangosimba saizvozvo. Saka ndiri kutarisira kuti ndinogona kuti ndikohwe pakati kurei. Sekuona kwamuri kuita mudara umu, dara iri harisati rasvika pahafu yemunda, asi iro pachezvaro ratosvika pahafu. Dara iri makore ese tinochitadza kuti zadza, asi rwendo runoru ruri kuzara, chimwe chichitosara chiri pasi. Saka kune varimi vese vangangove vaine mukana wokunge vachiona zvichikuitika pano, ndinokurudzira kuti izvo ngatirimei mbeu yeSeedco. Mbeu yeSeedco yavanoti 659 imbeu yakandishamisa zvikuru, nekuti kana mumwe munhu akasvika pairi anotozoziva kuti ishumba wamuudza. Ukasamuudza anofunga kuti inzou. Yakakura ine muguru yakaenzana nenzou, zvekutoti kubva pari zvino izvi inini mbeu iyo yeSeedco iyoyo zvikuru sei mbeu yeshumba iyi handisi kutozoregedza kuirima, ndiri kutoramba ndichitorima mbeu iyoyo. Kune vamwe varimi ndinokurudzira kuti izvo ngatizivei mbeu dzekudyara. Ukatenga kambeu kokungotenga chitenge-tenge, unowesta mari yako uchitenga fertilizer uchiisa mukambeu kechibaga chisingakuri. Asi Seedco mbeu dzayo zvikuru sei nzou neshumba iyoyi, ukaisa fertilizer yako unotoziva kutoti unokohwa chete. Muguru wacho wakakura semakuriro akaita muguru. kana uyo wakabatwa navadzimai vangu kana iri mudara umu. Saka ndinokurudzira varimi vese kuti ngatirime mbeu idzi, imbeu huru chaizvo.
Wow, that's one happy farmer and his wife. Mr. Gwata from Chitiyo village, Kwekwe in Kwekwe and Mazowe. He was explaining there the importance of variety selection for your area. So he explained that he grows SC659 and SC727. And over the years, they've been having good yield. But this year, they're anticipating that their yields are going to be quite high, where they are expecting to get very good yields of above 8 tons per hectare. So he also went on to explain that when you select varieties, you need to know that these varieties give you high yields and are tolerant to dry spells as well as disease pressure. Mr. Gwata went on to explain that their drying facility that we were seeing is almost full, but they are still harvesting. The crop is still in the field. But in previous seasons, they had not been able to fill this drying facility, which we call a tara. So now we are it's quite evident that they are going to get a bumper harvest because of their selection of seeds, SC659 and SC727. He went on to mention that SC659 shocked him in its performance, where this variety, in appearance, it looked like a 7 series, where some farmers thought it was a 7 series. Even the size of the cobs, it looked like a 7 series, which just goes to show that Seedco is not stopping in a bid to continuously bring about new genetics that add value to your cropping venture and employing what we are calling the top left approach, where the days to maturity are being reduced, but the yield level is being optimized. So the varieties that you're going to get in the different maturity groups are going to be quite high and comparable to the next maturity group. So that's what we heard from Mr. Gwata. He went on to showcase and show off his crop by showing it to the farmers who were present at the Virtual Field Day. And he also mentioned that his wife and his family are happy with the performance of Seedco genetics. Other farmers were encouraged to follow suit. On that point, we are going to move on to hear from the Seedco agronomist, Mr. Ephraim Mafaune. He's going to give us some talking points as well as some lessons for farmers in terms of variety selection as we then prepare for the next cropping season, because farming is a business. It's about planning and it's about timing.
Seedco kuti mbeu makadiko wabereki indonzi Ephraim Mafaune ndiri murimisi wenyu kuno kumaCentral. Nhasi tauya pano pababa namai Gwata. Tinotenda nekurima kwavakaita. Nonga kana nesi tese tiri pano tichiona munda uyu tinoona kuti idzi ndidzo hurudza idzi vakarima. Hanzi ngakana tichirima ngatore farming as a business. Chakakosha pakurima kuziva kuti mbeu yanoda kurima ndeipi. Kurima kwakafanana nekuchuza kwakafanana nekuchuza mudzimai. Ukachuza mudzimai asiriyepo kutanga, zvinoreva kuti imba iyoyo kwose kwatichaenda kumberi uko ichava nedambudziko. Zvakafanana nekumbeu, tinofanira kuti tichuze mbeu chaiyo chaiyo, and it starts with the right seed. Zvichireva izvo kuti pakusarudza, sesiri kuno kuarea yemaCentral, tinofanira kuziva kuti mbeu dzatinorima ndedzipi kuti tikwanise kunge tiri mubusiness. Mbeu dzatinorima imbeu dzeSeedco. Kuno tinokurudzira vanhu kuti varime shumba nenzou. Kana tichinge tazononoka tazosara nemwaka pamunozotora vanambizi nevamwe. KuSeedco isi tinochinja magiya. Regedzai ndanga taura nyaya yembeu yatiri kuona pano SC659. SC659 sokuona kwatinozviita, kuona kwatiri kuita pano. SC659 inotora mazuva kubva pa 142 days kusvika pa 148 days. Imomo munana SC659 tinodzi ishumba. Mune mama varieties arimo, mune SC661, SC649. Yield potential is up to 16 tons per hectare. Zvichireva izvo kuti kana tichinge takwanisa kurima, tikarima 1 hectare, totawana an average of 10 tons. chikatarisa kuGMB yezvezi kuGMB kubhadharwa mari kuri kubhadharwa 32,000 patani imwe chete. Zvichireva izvo kuti pahekita imwe chete tinenge tatione 320,000. Zvichireva izvo kuti tava mubhizinesi refarming. Asi chinenge chakakosha kuziva mbeu dzekuita sei, mbeu dzekuchuza idzo vana SC659 sekuona kwatiri kuita panapa. Baba namai Gwata sekutaura kwavaita kuti ivo vane 2 hectares pano pamunda pavo. Pa 2 hectares idzodzo vakati imwe hectare ndeye SC659, imwe hectare ndeye SC727. Ende vakutarisira goho rinosvika iri kuna 20 tons pama 2 hectares dzavo dzavanadzo. Zvichireva izvo kuti vatova mubusiness. Zvinoreva izvo kuti vachinge vakohwa vakaendesa kuGMB vakuwana mari yekutenga ma-inputs. Hatiregei kutenga mbeu kungoti chero chata sei, chero tatenga. Ngatizivei mbeu dzekutenga. Kachida mbeu ngatiendei kuSeedco. Tsvakai varimisi vekuSeedco kana kutsvaka murimisi wenyu munenge munaye muno muward 12 anonzi Mazviyo. Iyaye mukamunetsa tinoita kuti tinouya nembeu kuno kwamunenge muri moya motengera padhuze mochirima. Chinonzi hectare panze pane 2 hectares pano. Chinonzi hectare hakusi kukura chete kwakaita nzvimbo iyi. Hectare tinenge tichireva madzinde atinenge takarima ipapo ndo chinonzi hectare. Tikati sisi panapa toti pane 2 hectares torima mbeu tichisiyanisa kuti imwe inenge iri pano imwe inenge iri uko toti tarima 2 hectares. Hapana zvatinenge taita, inenge isingakwanichi 2 hectares. Ndosaka tichinzi ngatirimei nevarimisi vedu vatinenge tinavo, ngativei neushamwari nemadhumeni atinenge tinavo kuti atibatsire kuti tizive kuti pahekita panenge pachida mbeu madzinde mangani. Vana SC659 neSC727 dzakarimwa pano apa idzi tinotarisa isusu plant population ye 55,000 kernels kusvika ku 58,000 kernels. Zvichireva izvo kana tichinge taisa madzinde iwayo tinowana yield yatinenge tichitaura yandanga ndichiti pahekita tinofanira kuwana 16 tons pahekita imwe chete. Zvinobva nekuti taisa chii, taisa madzinde mangani pahekita. Saka varimi vekuno kumaCentral ndiri kukurudzira kuti ngativei tizive mbeu dzekurima. Hanzi kuti unzi murimi ka, hauzonzi murimi usina kurima mbeu dzeSeedco. Pese patiri pano pane munhu wese ari panapa hapana asina kudya sadza reSeedco. Zvichireva zvekuti Seedco handiti ka ndo kambani yenyu yembeu, ndo yatinofanira kuita sei kuziva ipapo. Pese patinenge tafunga kuda kutenga mbeu ngatizive kuti kune Seedco. Ngatizive kuti Seedco ine mavarieties ainotiuchikira anotipa mukoho. Zvakafanana nemuguru wandinawo panapa. Uchiona muguru uyu wega undoziva kuti panapa pane pane goho. Saka zvinoreva izvo kuti farmer akakwanisa kuchuza variety yekuti aite sei yekuti arime. Saka tinotikurudzira kuti tese tiri muno ngatizivei mbeu dzedu dzekuita sei dzekusarudza kana taakunorima. Iko kuSeedco ikoko tinochinja magiya sekutora kwana ndichita ndichiti tine mavarieties anachitaura 659 iri shumba. Tikachinja magiya tichienda kumberi kune ma7 series vane 727 yatamboona kumasuromo inova iyo iri kukoyiwa nani nemurimi wedu. 727 tine 727 719 ne729 mavarieties iwayo. 727 is up to 20 tons per hectare, 719 up to 18 tons per hectare, kwaita 729 is up to 20 tons per hectare. Zvakanakira mbeu idzodzo kana muchidzitarisa dzataona kuseri uko pamwe chete neinoyi ndezvekuti izvo kana tichinge tabisa miguri yedu iyi, tabisa chibage yatiri kuda, majanga anenge asara takutofidhisa mombe. Dzine mashizha akaita sei akawanda anova iwo anenge achipa chikafu chakawanda pamuguri. Saka izvozvo kana tisarudza mbeu tinofanira kuti tinge tinazvo misoro medu. Ngatitege kungoti chero mbeu yaita sei yauya toti aya ngatitorei. Sekutora kwamboita murimi wepano ati izvo ngatiregei kungoti kana tichinge tingotora mbeu dzese dzese tochitanga kutenga mafertilizer tichiisa pambeu isingazotipi goho. Kana tada kufunga kurima ngatifunge Seedco. Iwayo ma 727 anachitaura ma 7 series anachitaura iwayo. Ma 6 series anokutaura ndo andati anodiwa kuti arimwe kuno kuma Central. Tobva ipapo tichibva kuna na Shumba takuenda kuna Nambizi. Kumbizi ikoko tine ma varieties edu atinawo tine AC 555 iri nyuwani. Variety iyoyo inotipa yield up to 14 tons per hectare. Zvichireva izvo kuti kana mchinge mwaka uchinge waenda bhichana mchinge masara munotorachi iyoyo AC 555 moya morima. AC 555 ine ka that stay character green. Zvichireva izvo kuti mashizha acho anenge ari green. Hongu zuva ringauya pane nyaya yekuti mashizha aya anenge ari green anoramba achifidha chikafu kumwana. Nekuti chatiri kuda pachibage toda kuti tiwane miguri yakakura. Ndo zvakanakira AC 555 yandiri kutaura iyoyo. Hongu ndoziva kuti variko vanhu vangazotaura kuti but inozotsva zvakafanana nevanhu. Hakuna munhu asingata sei, hakuna munhu asingafi. Zuva kana richinge razowandisa ndo panoita sei painozotsva. Asi ine that drought tolerance kainenge inako iyo AC 555. Ikoko kumbizi ikoko tine AC 529 koita AC 513. Iyi andataura yekupedzisira AC 513 hakuna murimi asingaita sei asingaizivi. Inotori nezvimwe zvakatoita muropa redu tese tiri pano. Tobva kumbizi ikoko toenda kutsoko tine variety yatinayo nyuwani inonzi yo AC 419. AC 419 iyoyo hongu itsoko asi yakapfeka bhachi rembizi. Zvichireva izvo kuti yield yayo inoenda kuma 5 series kuna na AC 529 vana AC 555. Koita AC 403 muchikwata chetsoko ichocho. AC 403 ndofunga vazhinji vese vanoiziva yava nenguva iriko iri kumarket. Tichibva kutsoko tinoenda kutsuro. Kutsuro ikoko tino AC 301 AC 303. Aya mavarieties andiri kumataurira kune vaya vanenge vasara nemwaka, vaya vanenge vasaririra kuno kuma Central vanokwanisa kuzomatenga iwayo kana nguva yaita sei nguva yaenda. Asi mwaka uchitanga ngatitangei neShumba neNzou. Kana tichinge tadaro tinenge tagadzira goal and tinenge takwanisa kutora farming as a business. Ngati ndiri kukurudzira kuti varimi ngatiitei tione zvaitwa pano nababa namai Gwata izvi kuti mangwana katinge takuzouya gore rinouya hatiuyei tizoita ifield day pane umwe tisaramba tichiuya pane murimi umwe chete. Ende ipapo tinokurudzira varimi ngatiitei macompetition. Iyoyo competition basa rayo ndeyekuti inoimprove isusu our yield. Ichakati tichinge taimprove yield yedu kane omwe dzedu dzaita sei dzaimprove. Saka tikaita competition kutoita mafama
Wow, that was a mouthful of an explanation that we got from the Seedco agronomist for Mashonaland Central Province, Mr. Ephraim Mafaune. He went all out to explain the benefits of the different Seedco genetics, but he started off by explaining the one important factor, which he said variety selection is a key ingredient in farming profitably. He went on to give an example where he equated variety selection to the choice of a marriage partner, where he was saying, if you make the wrong choice, then you will be in trouble and you will be doubting and you won't be happy for a very long time. But he equated a good selection of seed to good selection of a lifetime partner, where he mentioned that if you select and choose wisely your lifetime partner, then you will be happy for the rest of your life. So this is what he was mentioning and explaining as an example for the farmers to also visualize and understand the importance of variety selection. Mr. Mafaune went on to explain the importance of choosing a variety in line with the region and agroecological zone where you will be based. He mentioned that for Mazowe, the late maturing varieties, which are the 700 series, and the medium maturing varieties, the 600 series, are the first choice varieties for that area. But however, he also mentioned that if the season is running a bit late and the farmer comes in to establish their crop, or if the farmer wants to do multiple crop rotations, they can also establish early maturing varieties in the 500 series. But before he went on to explain the characteristics of the different genetics in Sitco, he mentioned that at Sitco, the medium maturing varieties SC659, SC661, SC657 are available and are climate smart varieties that are high yielding, giving a yield potential of around 16 tons per hectare, and it needs to be established at a population of 50 to 55,000 plants per hectare to optimize on the yield levels. Yes, some farmers will reach 60,000, but this needs to be guided by an understanding of the region as well as the plant height so that lodging will not be apparent. Mr. Mafaune went on to explain the importance of taking note of the days to maturity of any variety when establishing it. He mentioned that SC659 matures in 142 to 148 days, plus or minus, depending on the altitude and the heat units. He went on to mention that this particular variety, SC659, is giving sizable cobs with a high row number, white kernels, and long, attractive cobs that have a closed tip, which are good and added attributes. 659 as well was mentioned to have good drought tolerance, but drought tolerance was further explained when Ms. Mafaune went on to explain the characteristics of the 500 series varieties that are also found in the Sitco product basket. In the 500 series, we have a new flagship, SC555. SC555 has wreaked havoc amongst the farming community, with farmers banking and asking for it for the next season because of its performance. This variety gives large, attractive cobs, closed tips, a drooping effect, and has a stay green effect, which allows for it to stay in the field without succumbing to moisture stress for a longer period. This is what Mr. Mafaune was also explaining. But he also mentioned that in that maturity group, we also have 529, which is another flagship from Sitco, and the traditional flagship 513, which has been grown extensively amongst farmers because of its high elasticity. He also gave an example where he was saying this variety 513 is in everyone's bloodline because at one point or another, we have come across it either in our lineage, in our grandparents growing it, our parents, or ourselves having grown this variety. He also went on to explain about the 400 series varieties, where he said we have a new flagship, SC419. SC419 gives yields that are comparable to the 500 series varieties, owing to the new genetics and the deliberate effort that Sitco is making to breed climate-smart, high-yielding varieties, employing the top left approach. Then he also mentioned that we have ultra-early maturing varieties in the 300 series, where we have SC301 and 303. But for Mazowe region, these varieties will have to be grown if a farmer wants to do multiple crop rotations, or if a farmer is lagging behind in terms of its establishment of the crop, because these are ultra early varieties that are suited to regions that get lower rainfall patterns or rotations that want to come in at closer intervals. But having said that, Mr. Mafaune went on to mention the importance of employing good agronomic practices to unlock the beauty of all these genetics, where he went to mention that the farmers need to put optimum plant populations so that they get optimum crop stands, which will give them a higher yield and a higher return per dollar invested, because farming is a business. So on that note, we are now going to hear from the Agritech Extension Officer, because at Sitco, we believe in smart partnerships. We believe in working hand in glove with the initiatives of the government and at the mother body, which is the Ministry of Agriculture. So we're going to hear from the Agritech Extension Officer a few words of advice, and as well as her message and a view of the varieties that were seen at Mr. Gwata's farm in Chiweshe, Mazowe.
Ini ndetwa Mazviyo, ndiri murimisi kuMazowe kuwadi 12. Ndiri maChitiyo village, ndiri murimisi weimomo. Nhasi tiri pamba pava Augustine Gwata. Vakarima mbeu yeSidco Saka tiri kuda kuona kuti gohwo racho rakamira sei sezvo ndiyo mbeu yavagara vachirima makore ese. VaGwata vakarima mbeu dzesidgo dzinoti 727 ne659. 659 takazovapa nekuti vairima 727 kwenguva yakareba, asi nemvura yedu taida kuona kuti 659 inobudisa gohwo rakamira sei. Saka VaGwata nemarimiro avaita makore ese, gohwo ravo riri kuratidza kuti gore rinova negohwo repamusoro. Vaimbowana magohwo rakagumira pa10 tons zvichidzika, asi nepatava gore rinori tichiona makohwero avari kuita aGwata, ndofunga sizeni yedu yanga yakanaka zvekuti aGwata vari kutarisirawo kubva pa15 tons zvichikwira. Tichitarisa gohwo re727 ne659 hazvina kunyanya kusiyana. Saka tikukurudzira kuti varimi vekuMazowe nedzimwe nzvimbo dzakatenderedza, kana mvura yedu yakanaka, ngatisatorai mbeu diki, ngatitorei mbeu dzinoenderana nemwaka iwoyo. Zvikuru kuMazowe tokurudzira mbeu dzemwaka uri pakati nepakati nemwaka murefu. Kunyanya 659 inenge ikuratidza kuti inotipa gohwo rinoda kungoenderana ne727 ne719. Saka tikukurudzira varimi kuti vatenge mbeu idzodzo kubva kuSidco. Chimwezve tiri pano paGwata nhasi, chatiratidza kuti gohwo raGwata rinokwanisa kukwira inyaya yekuti varimi vari kutokohwa vachiona mamiriro akaita chibage chavaGwata mumunda. Sezvavari izvozvo tiri mumunda tiri kutokohwa. Saka tiri kukurudzira kuti varimi, kana mbeu dzaoma dziri mumunda, kasirai kudzibvisa. Tisazoita malosses pakuti chibage chedu chaoma chiri mumunda chakuafektwa nezvipfukuto, pamwe chakudyiwa nemuchenje chiri mumunda. Saka tongokurudzira kuti varimi vakurumbidze kubvisa mbeu mumunda. Chimwe chandiri kukurudzira varimi ndechekuti mbeu yatikarima paGwata taida kutarisa imwe portion kuti takaisa 659 tiri papfumvudza tinobudisa gohwo rakaita sei. Asi ndiri kuona kuti nemiguri iri paGwata tinogona kuwana muguri bucket remuguri richizara nemuguri rechibage richizara nemuguri 45. Tiri muregion 2 kuMazowe, saka tikukurudzira varimi kuti vatenge mbeu dzeshumba nenzou, sezvo dziridzo mbeu dziri kutipa gohwo repamusoro.
Some wonderful words of encouragement there coming through from the Agricultural Extension Officer from Mazowe in Chiweshe, where she was explaining that farmers had an opportunity to select varieties that are in line with their region. And Mr. Gwata is known for being biased towards the establishment of 700 series varieties. But this season, it was encouraged for him to spread his varieties and grow medium maturing varieties as well, so that he can appreciate the benefits that come with these medium maturing varieties. So upon establishment of the 659, the Agri-Tech Extension Officer mentions that Mr. Gwata is quite happy with the performance of the 659 varieties, as well as the people who were present at this virtual field day to witness what was the beauty of the SC659 established at this farm. So the Agri-Tech Extension Officer also went on to mention that the beauty of field days is the fact that farmers get to have a look and learn approach and appreciate the good genetics at hand and make a wise choice in the next cropping season. So we are seeing there that the farmers were harvesting and they were seeing for themselves right from the cob what was coming out, as well as the yield that the farmer is going to get. So the Agri-Tech Extension Office anticipates that Mr. Gwata on his good blocks is going to hit yields of between 10 and 15 tons per hectare, owing to the good season, good management, and his good selection of varieties. The Agri-Tech Extension Officer also went on to mention that the farmers could then be able to see and witness the performance of Pfumvudza at this particular block, where they established these varieties on a Pfumvudza plot, which is a plot which was being advocated for significantly from the ministry, as well as the private partners, including Sidco. So the Pfumvudza block, upon establishment, it is said that in one line with 56 cobs, you are expected to get the 56 cobs filling a bucket, a 20-liter bucket of maize. So in this case, the Agri-Tech Extension Officer alluded to the fact that they were getting 45 cobs filling up a 20-liter bucket, which is to say the cobs were quite sizable and the kernel sizes were quite big. So this is an added advantage, which is to say farmers are going to get more than what they had anticipated because of the choice of variety that they will have made. We are seeing questions coming in and we have noted them down. Thank you so much for your questions. Please keep them coming so that we can interact with you when we finish hearing from these virtual field days, and we can respond to all your questions so that we can learn as we go. So at this point, we are going to hear from the neighboring, we're going to hear from the headmen, because the involvement of the community, we also need the local leadership to be part of such activities, because these are thought leaders in the community, and what they say will go. So we want to hear what the headmen had to say about the crops at hand.
Ndinotenda zvikuru zuva ranhasi kuunganidzwa kwataita pano pababa naamai Gwata nokuda zvavakakwanisa kurima gore rino zvakatikomba izvi. Chikurukuru ndechekuti ini ndinonzi Elijah Nyakudya, headman mudunhu raNegomo, ward 12. Ndingade kungozivisa vose vakatikomba kuti kana ndirini mutungamiriri wedunhu rino, zvakaoma kutungamirira vanhu vane nzara, asi zvataona panapa zvinoita kuti ruzhinji rwedu vakagonawo kudzidza izvozvi vakarima saizvozvi, nzara tinenge taitandanidza padunhu redu. SEEDCO zvairi kutirakidza pane izvi haisi kungotaura nyaya chete, tiri kuzvionera pachibaho chatakabata pano. Chiri kuratidza kuti chakakura zvakanaka uye imbeu inorarama pamwaka upi noupi sokutsanangurirwa kwatiri kuita. Saka ndinokurudzira kuti kana dai tabva pane tadzidza nevakadzidza kare vacho, titevedze gwara iri ratadzidza pano, kuti kana toodha mbeu tobva taona mbeu kwayo sezvatadzidziswa mazita adzo ese pano nhasi, kuti kana tozorima tinotarisirawo kuona gohwo rakakura, nokuti tinenge tashandisa zvakakodzerana nevhu redu. Mvura yakanaya gore rineri yakapembedza kwazvo ivhu ratakatarisa pano rinonzi regova dzvuku iri. Ndosaka muri kuona munda uyu wakamira zvechidhomeni zvacho, pasi pese pakafidwa zvakanaka sezvatatsanangurirwa, kusvikirawo chichikura zvakanaka chisingambodonha pasi. Kana takatarisa pandakamira hapana chakawira pasi, chose chakamira nekuti kubva pasi nokukura kwachaita zvataudzwa zvine simba. Chibaho chakakodzera kurimwa nomunhu wese womudunhu rino kuti aburikire. Saka ndatenda zvikuru nechikwata cheSEEDCO chauya kuzotidzidzisa pano pavaGwata kuti aiwa, basa renyu ngaripfuurire mberi muchidzidzisa vanhu zvinoponesa upenyu hwavo nemhuri dzavo, kunyange negohwo rinozovapawo mari inotopindisa vana zvikoro, kana kutotanga mabhizinesi zvatanzwa panapa. Unotanga kana uchirima zvinhu zvakadai. Ndatenda zvikuru.
So we've heard there from the local leadership, the headman. He spoke about the importance of taking note of the region where you are growing your crop again. But before he mentioned all that, the headman emphasized the importance of food security for there to be good leadership. He mentioned that for him to be able to lead his people well, the people need to be fed and hunger needs to be chased away. So this is why he thought it prudent to be part of this virtual field day, so that you could also learn and encourage other farmers to come in and learn and see what these other farmers are doing. So from the headman's words, he went on to mention that in Chiweshe, in Ward 12, where Mr. Nyakudya leads, he encourages the farmers in his locality to grow Sitco genetics so that he can increase the food security of his community, as well as promote farming as a business amongst these people, where he mentioned that farming is a business that can also provide a sustainable livelihood amongst these people. He went on to mention that these different varieties that were being explained at this farm from Sitco are good for his area. And he said the nature of the season was also favorable for these varieties to perform. But he also mentioned that the farmer employed good agronomic practices, where he was saying the fields were cleaned according to the standards of the Agritech extension officers, as well as the Sitco agronomists, which is another key attribute and a key trait for the farmer to be profitable. And he also mentioned that the issues to do with the red clay soils that he has. So it's important for you to put your fertilizer rates guided by the nature and the type of the soils that are at hand. Where in their area, he mentioned that they have red clay soils. So these soils also perform well with good fertilizer management, as well as good rains. So this is what the farmer was also getting. So we want to thank the headman for his words of encouragement, and as well as for being a good leader who understands that a hungry man is an angry man. So you need to make sure that food security comes first for there to be a good governance. So we want to thank the headman for that. At this point, we are going to hear from the neighboring farmer what his take-home message is from this particular field day.
Pamberi nekurima, pamberi nekurima, pamberi nekuguta pasi nenzara. Chiripo njokuti ndikukurudzira ini kuti mbeu yeSidco chokwada inyepe. Tikati Sidco, kati mbeu ndekuti Sidco. Nekudaro inini ndine nguva nchirima, asi pano pandauya nhasi ndaiona kuti aiwa ndairima zvanga zviri pasi mbichana. Apa chokwadi pakarimwa zvinhu chokwadi. Ende ndokurudzira zvikuru kuti hama dzangu varimi hatirime mbeu iyi. Nekuti mvura yakata shoma iyo inombomira ichita senge pasina chaitika. Kana yanaya inosumuka, dzimwe mbeu idzi hadziite izvozvo, dzoramba dzingoenda. Saka dzizovhurura pasina mvura. Saka nekudaro ndokurudzira zvikuru varimi vari pano kuti hatiitei zvakaitwa panapa izvi. Ndosimbouya makore ese panapa, hongu vanosimborima zvavo, asi zveigore nemwaka uno uyu aiwa zvine pamberi nembeu yacho vakadyara iyi. Iri panapa iyi yamuri kuona iyi SC 659 zvokwada inyepe kana miguru yacho mukingwe unonimo. Uyu kwakurova unogona kuenda Rufiro. Kune vanoziva kuti Rufiro chii. Nemi mese mauya pano varimisi veSidco ndokutendai nekuti izvi ndazvoona. Ndokurudzirana kurima. Naizvozvo handina zvangu mashoko akati wandei. Ndongotenda varimi vari panapa vagwata nemhuri yavo. Ndopakutenda zvikuru. Nemi mese matikuta veZFU nevamwe vese vasine chokuita masabhuku nemachairman, ndakutendai zvikuru. Toonana muzvikamu zvinotevera. Ndatenda.
So we're hearing there from the neighboring farmer. It's important for us to copy good deeds and take them and employ them at our own farming ventures. So here we are hearing the neighboring farmer praising the crop that was grown at Mr. Gwata's farm. But he was benchmarking this crop against Mr. Gwata's previous crops from previous seasons, where he was mentioning that, yes, Mr. Gwata is a very good farmer. And over the years, they have seen and can attest to the fact that Mr. Gwata is a very good farmer. But this year, they said that the neighboring farmer was saying that Mr. Gwata's crop was exceptionally good, owing to the fact that the management was optimum. He established new genetics, SC659, coupled with the 727, and he also managed to employ good agronomic practices, making the field weed-free right through until harvesting. And no insect pest damage could be seen, even on the cobs, because as we rightfully know, that fall armyworm can damage right through to the cobs, and you can even see some active fall armyworm inside the core of the cob if you are harvesting when the cob still has a high moisture. So it's important for good agronomic practices to be employed, because this is the only way we are going to bridge the gap between the actual attainable yield and the potential yields of the varieties that we will have established. So we want to thank the neighboring farmer there for being honest and explaining that he has learned a lot from what Mr. Kwata has done. He went on to thank the people who had attended, where we learned that farmer unions also participate in virtual field days, where ZFU was also present. And we also learned that the headman was there, as well as the other people who were learning from from the experiences of Mr. Kwata. So we want to thank this neighboring farmer for explaining and for thanking the Kwata family for doing such a splendid job in the 2020-21 farming season. As we move to wrap up, we are going to hear now from the neighboring farmer, who also has a few words and a take-home message from this field day before we move into the question and answer segment. So if you have burning questions, please send them through, because right after this segment, we are going to go into the question and answer segment.
Ini ndinonzi Ana Gama, ndinorima ndiri kuno kuChiweshe, muwadhi 12. Saka ndinokurudzira varimi kuti varime mbeu yakaita saiyoyi, sezvataona pano pababa Gwata naamai Gwata, kuti Sidiko ine goho guru. Sidiko ndiyo musha wegoho guru. Ngatitorei Sidiko.
Wow, that is short and sweet message indeed from Ana Gama, who is a neighboring farmer. You could tell from the enthusiasm that she had seen things that she had never seen before. She had seen a beautiful crop of SC 659 and 727 established by the Kwata family. So she was praising the Kwata family for managing to establish such a beautiful crop and for managing to employ good agronomic practices. But she also encouraged all the farmers present and the farmers who are viewing and all the farmers who are also going to view this clip at a later stage to copy what the Kwata family has done and employ and grow Sidco genetics. She used a very good clause where she said that Sidco is the home of bumper harvest. And indeed, Sidco is the home of bumper harvest. If you can just check out the crop sizes that we were seeing throughout the course of this presentation, from the Kwekwe crop right through to the Mazowe crop, and throughout the season when we were showcasing the performance of Sidco genetics in these virtual field days, where we started off in Headlands, we went to Doma in Mangura, we went to Chegutu, we went to different areas, just showcasing the beauty of Sidco genetics, just to show that Sidco has a variety for every farmer, every cropping region, and Sidco is indeed the home of bumper harvest. So on that note, would like to thank you for joining us for this double-decker virtual field day, where we were in Mazowe and Chiweshe, Mazowe Chiweshe, as well as in Kwekwe at Sebakwe block, where we're showcasing the performance of Sidco genetics. On that note, would like to get into the question and answer segment. So we're going to be responding to the questions that we got in the chat box. If you have any burning questions, please feel free to send through your questions and we'll gladly respond to them. So the first question that we have here is from Hilton. Hilton is in Norton, and he says, I want to estimate combine higher dates. What is the average percentage moisture content, percentage moisture content drop per unit period? This is a very, very good question. And it just goes to show that our farmers are learned out there and they're going the extra mile to look for things that make a difference and make them a cut above the rest. So well done, Hilton, for asking this pertinent question. So issues to do with dry down are related to issues to do with the heat units that are experienced in a given area. So the heat units are what we are going to see as a key contributing factor to the rate of dry down, number one. Number two, the variety that you will have established will also contribute to the days to maturity that you're going to get, as well as the dry down. So the dry down is the period from physiological maturity, which is to say the crop has reached a stage where there's no accumulation of dry matter, it's not growing anymore. But from that point onwards, it will be at a moisture content of about 30%. So it has to lose that moisture subsequently until it reaches the desired moisture content of between 12.5 to 13, but GMB will accept maize at 12.5%. So for that to happen, the moisture should be lost at a certain rate. So the rate of dry down is from 1.5 to 1.8% per week. So this is what is anticipated. And for the 600 series specifically, 659, we find that the dry down has been brought back a bit, where the dry down is at 1.5, as opposed to the other 600 series varieties like 649, which has a dry down of 1.7. So this is important to take note of. And it also speaks to issues to do with coming in with your next rotation crop, where some farmers who want to come in with it need to be guided by the dry down rate as well. So thank you very much, Hilton, for that pertinent question. So at this point, we are going to take this question now from Kwekwe Mazowe. So the question is, in region 1, in Chipinge, to be specific, what is the most ideal variety for my region? So for Chipinge, surprisingly enough, over the couple of times that I've visited that area, you find that Chipinge is one of the provinces which has all the agroecological regions, which is to say there's region 1 in Mount Selinda there, there's region 2 in parts of Chipinge, there's region 3 as you move to Clearwater there. And so there are all the different regions encompassed in Chipinge. So depending on where exactly in Chipinge you are, the variety selection will then differ. If you're in region 1, still in Chipinge, you can establish the 700, 400, 700 and 600 series varieties successfully without any challenge. But if you are now in the region 3, region 4 parts of Chipinge, you can then establish the 400 series, the 500 series varieties, as these will be more inclined to reaching maturity without having challenges of moisture or termination of the season before maturity is reached. So Chipinge is a unique region where you find some areas where you have very high rainfall, region 1, your Mount Selinda down there, where you have your Tanganda, as well as some regions where you find that there are even some baobabs growing there, just to show that you are in regions where rainfall patterns are becoming lower, of region 4 and region 5. So this is very important for you to take note of. So be guided by your region rather than your city or your town, because this will give you more accurate recommendation guidelines. So in Chipinge, it will differ depending on that. Thank you very much, Kwekwe Mazowe, for your important and excellent question. So the next question that we have here is from Colin Makuliashi. Fall armyworm is my biggest challenge. How best can I control it? Using all types of chemicals, but sometimes it takes time to control it. True, indeed. And fall armyworm is indeed a menace in maize production. So you find that over the years, when fall armyworm came in, the general misconception which was there was that fall armyworm could still perform like the stock border that we were used to. But over time, and with thorough studies, it came apparent that fall armyworm was more devastating in the sense that it had multiple instars and it could be present in the field right through up to harvesting, unlike the traditional stock border that we were used to. So fall armyworm control is hinged upon timeliness as well as regular scouting. So timeliness comes in the sense that if you're going to scout your field regularly in a systematic manner and be able to detect the number of affected plants, it will give you a guideline on when to come in with control measures, where you find that if you are going to come in and spray when the economic threshold levels have been reached, which is to say at that point, any damage above that is going to affect your economic load. So you need to come in and spray at that point. We need to move away from the notion that once we see one plant being affected, we spray, because we also want to move with sustainable development goals, where we are saying we need to take care of our environment. We need to be environmentally cautious of what we are doing and what we are applying. So you don't need to come in and spray at a time when you have not detected economic threshold levels of insect pests, because this will only harm the environment, and in some cases make the insect pests more tolerant and resistant to the chemicals that are going to be used. So fall armyworm can be controlled, but the trick is regular scouting, time-years control, and you need to come in on average with 2 sprays, where you find that at around the time you come in with your top dressing, at around 3 weeks after emergence, some farmers come in as a rough rule of thumb and scout their field and do their first spray. Then 2 weeks later, they can come in and do their second spray. But this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. It needs to be custom-made to your field based on regular scouting as well as threshold levels of the insect pests. Thank you very much, Colin, for that important question. As well as another important issue before we leave this question from Colin is to come in with rotations of chemicals that you are using. Active ingredients such as emamectin benzoate are being used extensively and they are working well. But the challenge is if we are going to continue using this particular active ingredient alone, then the development of resistance is going to occur and we are going to be in a fix. So you need to alternate products with different active ingredients and modes of action for you to be effective. And cultural control, where you can come in and just kill the egg nests or the egg masses on the leaves by just squeezing them with your fingers. Then you can kill them. So these are also some cultural practices that can be used, as well as rotation with crops that are not susceptible to fall annual. Then we have another question here. The other question we have is from Carlton Tsiga. And thank you very much for bringing through this question from Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Which variety would you recommend for Matabeleland region, factoring in that the maize crop can be irrigated in the event of low rainfall? Thank you for being specific in your question, because had you just ended by asking which variety in Matabeleland region, bearing in mind that Matabeleland is region 4 and region 5, would have then rushed to give you varieties that are early maturing because of the nature of the rainfall pattern in your region. But you went on to specify that you have irrigation, which is a good factor. So with irrigation, issues to do with the length of the rainfall season are not hindrances anymore. So you can establish 700 series varieties, 600 series varieties successfully in Matabeleland, because outside of the rainfall pattern, you have the capacity to irrigate your crop and supplement. And the heat units in Matabeleland are high enough to sustain the 700 series crop without any challenge. So you just need to employ good agronomic practices, irrigate your crop, and you can safely establish your 700 series and your 600 series crop in Matabeleland. Just a case in point, we were at Adangwisi and Antelope, where we saw in the 2020-21 farming season when they were establishing their crops, and they established SC659 there because it does well in that area because they have irrigation and they wanted to come in with it. But they could have even done the 700 series, but because they want to come in with it, they had to do the medium maturing variety. So you also need to be guided by your next cropping plan so that you make an informed choice. Thank you very much, Colton Siga, for that important question. So these were the questions that we had. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the CITCO Virtual Field Days throughout the course of the 2020-21 farming season. So as we enter into the wheat growing season, just a few tips. Wheat planting is upon us, and you need to make sure that you plant on time. So this is the time for you to establish your wheat crop so that you avoid challenges of late rains coming in, early rains coming in on your wheat crop and affecting the quality by affecting the falling numbers of your wheat, making your wheat standard grade and not premium when other people will be paid for premium wheat. So we also need to establish your crop on time. This is the planting window for wheat and it's fast running out. Make sure all wheat is in the ground by the end of May. And remember, CITCO is wheat varieties, SC Njuna, SC Select, and SC Serena for your picking. SC Select specifically being a short-statured variety with a high yield potential, high disease tolerance to leaf rust. So we have varieties for you to be profitable in your farming venture. Remember, farming is a business. It starts with the right seed coupled with good agronomic practices. And CITCO is the real deal. CITCO is the home of bumper harvest. Being the home of bumper harvest, we are scattered across the country through our provincial agronomists who are ready to assist you at any given point in time if you engage them. So you can get contact details from our website, www.citcogroup.com, or you can visit our Facebook page, our Twitter handle, and you can send your questions to our agronomy email. So you can also come in with your questions on our WhatsApp number, 07. Let me just quickly give you the WhatsApp number. 0732 270 080. 0732 270 080. So engage us on all these different platforms, or feel free to engage our agronomists in your different provinces. CITCO is there to improve and provide solutions in your farming journey. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant day.